Hello and a very warm welcome to a brand new edition of the WION VOA Co-Production. I'm Molly Gambhir. This week saw US President Joe Biden engaging with world leaders on a wide range of issues. He also sat down with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, for a historic summit that was closely watched across the world. They discussed contentious issues, and clear differences still remain between the two sides. VOA White House correspondent Patsy Widakuswara getting us this detailed report from Geneva on those talks.
In this Swiss villa in Geneva, an exchange of diplomatic pleasantries acknowledged by U.S. President Joe Biden.
The tone of the entire meetings, I guess it was a total of 4 hours, was good, positive.
And his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin.
The conversation was absolutely constructive.
The two sides agreed to begin talks on strategic stability and cybersecurity.
I think the fact that we've broken from a pattern of mutual penalization and a narrowing of diplomatic relations, that's important. That pays dividends for both parties. But as far as concrete deliverables and changes in Russian behavior, only the next couple of months will tell.
But despite holding the summit in a 19th century Swiss villa, the stage for past landmark agreements, differences remain, namely on Ukraine, where conflict has simmered for years between the army and Russian-backed separatists.
I communicated the United States' unwavering commitment to the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine.
Ukraine is seeking membership in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which Moscow has said it would not accept. Biden underscored support for human rights, including the fate of imprisoned Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. Putin dismissed his crackdown on political rivals and pointed out the chaos in the U.S. during Black Lives Matter protests. He is unyielding on the issue of Navalny.
He arrived deliberately, acting to be detained. He did what he wanted.
Biden made clear he is different from his predecessor, Donald Trump, who in 2018 sided with Putin instead of U.S. intelligence agencies on Moscow's interference in the 2016 U.S. election.
President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today.
I made it clear that we will not tolerate attempts to violate our democratic sovereignty or destabilize our democratic elections, and we would respond.
Biden also told Putin he would respond in a cyber way should Russia launch a cyber attack.
Biden will be careful to be proportionate in any cyber response he engages in, understanding that Russia is not a peer cyber power, but a very, very capable one, and one that has the ability to inflict great harm on the U.S. using cyber capabilities.
Biden returned to Washington immediately after his summit with Putin, wrapping up a week-long tour to shore up transatlantic relations with allies. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News.
And for more on this, we are joined by Voice of America correspondent Amy Hybels in Washington. Hi, Amy. This summit between the two leaders is expected to determine how the relationship shapes up in time to come. What is expected to happen next in the wake of those talks?
Sure. In terms of concrete steps moving forward, U.S. President Joe Biden and Russian President Vladimir Putin both agreed to return their ambassadors to their respective posts in Moscow and in Washington, D.C. Now, it's important to note that after the press conference, both leaders talked about issues pertaining to cybersecurity and arms controls, which gives us a little bit of a glimpse as to what we may expect in the months to come. President Biden said he and President Putin talked about the next steps their country should take on arms control measures, and Reuters is reporting that Russia expects arms control talks with the U.S. to start within weeks. That, according to an interview that was just published on the Foreign Ministry's website. The New START Treaty, or Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, expires in 2026. Now, regarding cybersecurity, President Putin said he and President Biden agreed to begin consultations. The Russian leader told reporters on Wednesday that most of the cyber attacks in the world are carried out from the cyber realm of the United States, followed by Canada, 2 Latin American countries that he didn't name, and Britain. Now, while the U.S., Canada, and Britain all conduct cyber espionage, a fact check by the Associated Press says that most of the damage in regards to cyber attacks on record have come from either state-backed Russian hackers are Russian-speaking cyber criminals who operate in Russia and in allied countries. Keep in mind, Wednesday's summit in Geneva took place just weeks after that ransomware attack on the Colonial Pipeline here in the United States. We reported on that for you, that it impacted gas stations in the southeast United States for days as there was a shortage of gas supplies. Now, that attack was blamed on Russia-based cyber criminals. President Biden said on Wednesday he gave President Putin a list of 16 critical infrastructure sectors that he thinks should be considered off limits. Those include both the energy and the water sectors. President Biden's remark that there's much work ahead is probably an apt summary of where things stand right now.
Right. Amy, any updates on the fate of the 2 American prisoners being held in Russia?
U.S. President Joe Biden said he brought this up during his meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. On Wednesday, President Biden told reporters we're going to follow through with that discussion, and that the 2 Americans, their names are Paul Whelan and Trevor Reed, are wrongfully imprisoned in Russia. Now, according to the Associated Press, Reed was convicted of assaulting a police officer while intoxicated, and he was sentenced to 9 years in prison. Whelan, who also holds Canadian, Irish, and British citizenship, was arrested in 2018, convicted of espionage, and sentenced to 16 years. Whelan says he's innocent of that charge, and both men are former U.S. Marines. Now, in an exclusive interview by phone with CNN earlier this month before the summit, Whelan said, quote, "This is not an issue of Russia against me. It's an issue of Russia against the United States." And he went on to ask President Biden to, quote, "aggressively discuss and resolve this issue with his Russian counterparts." Reed's mother, in a live interview on CNN, said she hopes the 2 leaders can come to some sort of agreement that would free her son along with Whelan, who she says are both innocent. Reuters is reporting that Putin's spokesman said that the summit has laid the groundwork for talks on a potential prisoner swap between Russia and the United States, and that list of potential prisoners to be exchanged is much wider than those that have been publicly discussed.
Right. Stay with me, Amy, as we get our viewers this other detailed report on how new details have emerged about the expected U.S. role in Afghanistan after America's military exit following 20 years of war. VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb is the only reporter traveling with the commander of the U.S. Central Command, which oversees military operations across Afghanistan and West Asia.
The United States is not planning to support Afghan forces with airstrikes against the Taliban once the U.S. troop withdrawal is complete. That's what General Frank McKenzie, the head of U.S. Central Command, told VOA in an exclusive interview while traveling to Europe and the Middle East.
The United States forces are going to be striking the Taliban if they put Afghan forces in danger. That is continuing to go on right now, correct?
So long as we have forces in country. Those forces, as you know, are going to draw down to zero or at some point in the future. After that, any strikes that we do in Afghanistan are going to be against al-Qaeda and ISIS.
McKenzie said future counter-terror strikes in Afghanistan will be limited to instances where enemy plans have been discovered that aim to strike America and its allies at home, as when thousands were killed on September 11th, 2001.
That would be the reason for any strikes that we do in Afghanistan after we leave. It would have to be that we've uncovered someone who wants to attack the homeland of the United States, one of our allies and partners.
Experts and former commanders have raised concerns about the lack of details Washington has revealed so far about securing Afghanistan after the U.S. withdrawal. With just a short time until U.S. forces complete their withdrawal, retired General Joseph Votel, the former head of Central Command, told VOA that transparency with Afghan allies is key.
And I think we owe it to them to be as clear as we can possibly be so that we are planning against what it is our policy is, and they have a clear understanding of what it is that we are going to do, but also what we are not going to do.
The U.S. and NATO allies will continue to fund Afghan soldiers' salaries, help their Air Force with aircraft maintenance, and train Afghan troops. The latter two will be done outside of Afghanistan. But to military experts who fear the Afghan military will fall once U.S. troops leave, those efforts aren't enough.
Just because we leave and we say it's over, it's not over. You know, we talk about forever wars. Well, the Taliban is interested in Al-Qaeda, interested in a forever jihad, and they're going to keep fighting.
The Pentagon has publicly said a Taliban victory is not a foregone conclusion. Privately, defense officials admit they are much more worried. Carla Babb, VOA News, Naval Air Station, Cicadas, Italy.
And going back across to Voice of America, Washington correspondent Amy Hybels. Amy, what timeline is the U.S. now working on under President Joe Biden when it comes to withdrawing all American troops from Afghanistan? Further details that have emerged now.
U.S. President Joe Biden has ordered the withdrawal of the troops to be complete by September 11th, as that marks the 20th anniversary of the terrorist attacks on the United States. Now, in her final interview with General Frank McKenzie, the commander of U.S. Central Command, VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb learned that the plans for securing the airport in Kabul are still being worked on. That's a really important matter because the U.S. is still operating its embassy in Kabul. Yesterday, we learned that U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said that the U.S. and Turkey have agreed that Turkey would take a lead role in securing the airport. In a previous interview with General McKenzie, Carla had asked about the pull-out of U.S. troops in regards to China's influence in the region. And McKenzie said he thinks Afghanistan is a place of interest. The general also said it's important to recognize that China has global pretensions, and their response must be equally global in its character. As for the U.S. military's role in Afghanistan, the general noted that while the U.S. is ending its boots-on-the-ground presence in Afghanistan, he said they're going to support the Afghan security forces in the U.S. and that they will still have the capability to go in over the horizon to get after Al-Qaeda and ISIS should those targets emerge.
Right, stay with me, Amy. On to our other key focus in this edition. Parts of the United States are being invaded by a mass brood of cicadas that emerges from the ground once every 17 years. For most people, the noisy insects are a nuisance, but for others, they are a meal. VOA's Alan Bornahan getting us this report.
If you live in the Washington, D.C. area, there's been a constant high-pitched buzz in the air for weeks now. It's caused by cicadas, and these particular cicadas show up around every 17 years to reproduce. For many, their noise and discarded shells are a nuisance. But to Chef Sang Longlot, owner and chef at the Laotian restaurant Tip Cow, they are a welcome sight.
So we want to make sure it's clean, we want to make sure it's cooked, so we want to make sure it's safe. You have to do at least 3 times. 3-4 times, right? Depends on how much dirt.
You've heard of farm to table? Well, during cicada season, Chef Sang cooks up dishes from tree to table.
So we start harvesting a lot of it, and I've been posting photos of it, sharing on social media. It gets a lot of customer attention. The people who are not our customer, people are our customer. So we do some sort of survey, like who would want to try it. So most people are like responsible, like the younger people. So they're more like adventurers and they want to try it. They want to see how it tastes like.
Chef Sang has prepared 3 different types of cicada-based dishes for us to try today. Jiao Jug Jan, fried cicadas smashed with roasted garlic, ginger, onion, fish sauce, and fresh lime juice.
Go and put in the oil. It's going to need a little bit more oil because we're going to fry them.
Kua Jug Jan, fried cicadas with peanut, lime leaves, tamarind, salt, and garlic. And a salad called Lap Jug Jan, which is boiled cicadas, fish sauce, lime juice, toasted rice powder, and herbs.
All right, this is La Cicada.
These dishes are not included on the restaurant's main menu and are available for takeout only.
So when our guests call, or they order online, it will be like just say Jug Jan. So that's kind of like a secret. so they will come and pick up to go only.
In many countries in the world, insects are a regular source of food, but not in much of the West.
At a very young age, I remember like my aunts, uncles, my parents, they would like go out and like harvest all these cicadas. It's been perceived in America that these, cicadas are bugs or considered as disgusting, but in other cultures, it's considered as a delicacy.
We asked a first-time cicada eater to give us a review.
Rasanya enak, gurih.
It tastes good, savory. The texture is crunchy, maybe like shrimp. Very delicious.
Nutritionists and environmentalists alike have long promoted insects as a more sustainable source of protein than a farm-raised cattle. But here in the US, having cicadas for dinner is only for the most daring of eaters. From Washington, D.C., Irfan Isan, VOA News.
And Voice of America Washington correspondent Amy Hybels has been with us, getting us more. Amy, tell us more about the cicada outbreak and the concerns that have been raised. How much longer do we expect these winged insects to be around in this area?
Well, I'll admit to your viewers, I just moved back to Washington, D.C. in time for the 17-year reemergence of the cicadas. I remember being here back in 2004. I was living in Northern Virginia at the time, and I'll admit they were a lot louder and much more of a nuisance in the Northern Virginia area than here in Washington, D.C. Now, I have had one land on me, and I've seen them clinging to the sides of trees in Northeast D.C. Even U.S. President Joe Biden was captured on camera having to swat one away. And you probably heard the news story last week where a U.S. press plane that was heading to the G7 actually was grounded due to the cicada invasion. They couldn't take off. Apparently, cicadas are attracted to the loud hum of the engines. Now, I have to admit, unlike the brave man you just saw in that news story, I don't care how you dress them up, what kind of sauces or fancy spices, or how much protein they have. I am not going to be eating cicadas. I hate to disappoint you. They do have a very interesting life cycle. They mate and they die. They're already starting to die here in the D.C. area, and we expect by the 4th of July they'll be completely gone, which is actually good news for those of us that are hoping to watch the fireworks display outdoors on the National Mall this year. For those that love the pesky insects, they're going to have to wait until 2038 for the return.
Amy Hybels, thanks very much for getting us up to speed with the latest coming in from the United States.